The tricky speedster, a protection deity from the age of myths, he who blazes a trail to light the way, and who just so happens to be my personal favorite Warframe. Hey there guys, gals, and non-binary pals, my name's Zenosfire. Today we're going to take a look at Nezha. If at the end of this video you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment down below or swing by my Twitch chat at twitch.tv/Zenosfire, and I'd be happy to give you a hand with any questions that you may have. Before we get sunk into the nitty-gritty of the abilities in the build, let's first take a look at Nezha and Nezha Prime's stats and differences between the two, and how to get one of your very own. At max rank and unmodded, Nezha has 190 armor, 225 energy, 375 health, 150 shields, and a sprint speed of 1.15. Nezha Prime, like all Prime frames, has a bit of a boosted stat line with 250 armor, 225 energy, 375 health, 150 shields, and a sprint speed of 1.2. So, not a major difference between the two, but trust me when I say that every little bit counts. Regular Nezha's blueprints can be acquired from the Tenno lab in your clan's dojo, whereas Nezha Prime's blueprints can be acquired from unlocking relics or by trading with a fellow Tenno. Keep in mind that sometimes the relics change, so for the most up-to-date information, I've linked the wiki page for Nezha Prime below. Next, let's slide into taking a peek at Nezha's passive and abilities. Just a quick note for newer players, regular Nezha and Nezha Prime have the exact same passive and abilities, so this information will work for both. Also, all of his abilities benefit from ability efficiency, so keep that in mind. Nezha's passive causes him to slide 60% further and 35% faster, which means his mobility is one of the highest in the game. However, this basically turns down the friction physics that affects Nezha, causing him to be more of a drift king rather than a drag racer. Nezha is one of the few Warframes in the game to have an augment for its passive, called Controlled Slide. It's an Exlos mod that turns off the passive and gives you 15% ability strength. Use this only if you're not a fan of the drift playstyle, but love the other aspects of Nezha. Nezha's first ability is Firewalker. When you use his ability, you'll leave a fire trail wherever you may go for a bit of time, except for when you're falling. When enemies walk through your fire trail, they take damage and are also affected by Heat status proc. The Heat status proc causes them to have a slightly reduced armor, and also flail a belt, giving you a bit of a crowd control element as well. However, when your allies walk through the trail, they'll be cleansed of any status effects that may be affecting them. On top of the damage and supporting aspects, Firewalker also boosts Nezha's movement speed by a flat 25%, causing him to be even faster than you might have expected at first glance. Firewalker's damage is affected by ability strength mods, the duration is affected by ability duration mods, while range mods have no effect on the trail but does affect a synergy with another ability, which we will get into shortly. The augment mod, Pyroclastic Flow, adds up all of the damage Firewalker's dealt during its duration, and then unleashes the cumulative damage in a trail of fire when you next cast it. It's an interesting augment for sure, but in my opinion there are better options for your mod slots. But make sure to give it a try for yourself though, see if it suits your playstyle. Nezha's second ability, Blazing Chakram, is a surprisingly amazing support and DPS ability. Nezha will throw the ring on his back, aka the Chakram, at a target that you cast the ability on. Then it will bounce between up to 6 enemies and then return to you. While it's bouncing around, it'll deal a good chunk of damage to enemies and cause a heat status proc, but also apply a unique debuff to them, causing them to take massive amounts of extra damage from any source, and also have an increased chance to drop health and energy orbs. You can also hold the button when you cast Blazing Chakram to increase its damage and double its range. When you hold cast the ability, it doesn't bounce between enemies and will only travel in a straight line. It will, however, punch through all enemies for its full range, and also knock down anyone hit by the ring. But wait, there's more. While the ring is in flight, if you recast the ability, you will teleport to the ring. And this is where that Firewalker synergy comes in. When you teleport to the ring, Firewalker will cause an explosion in an area around where you teleport to. Oh, did you think this is the only synergy this ability has? Just you wait, it gets better. Blazing Chakram's damage and the extra damage taken debuff is affected by ability strength mods, amount of time the debuff is applied to the enemy is affected by ability duration mods, and the range of the throw is not affected by ability range mods. The augment mod for Blazing Chakram, Reaping Chakram, increases the amount of damage the ring deals by 2 for each enemy it hits. Oh, it also doubles the chance for the health orbs to drop, so it comes in handy with a bit of extra team healing. Nezha's third ability, Warding Halo, is where this fiery lad becomes one of the most survivable frames in the game. When you cast Warding Halo, you go invincible for a short period of time, and then you'll get a damage absorption buff that will absorb 90% of all damage you take up to a certain amount. Okay, it's a bit more complex than that. During that invincibility time, you'll see a little UI element in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen appear with numbers. You'll absorb all the damage you take during that invincibility window, which is then multiplied and added to its base absorption amount. And then, that's how much damage you'll absorb with Warding Halo. When you take damage, 90% of that damage will be minus from the Halo's buff. Easy, right? Now, before we go on, we have to talk about that multiplier I mentioned because it's super important. The amount of damage that Warding Halo can absorb is based on a few things, but mainly your ability strength and the total armor that Nezha has. So to really get the most out of this ability, make sure that you have some kind of armor mod on him on top of the ability strength. When the buff gets to 0, you again become invincible for 1 second, and that will cause an explosion around you. That explosion deals a heat status effect to all enemies, causing them to do that whole flail belt thing we mentioned before. Oh, and while Warding Halo is active on you, and if you get too close to an enemy, they'll take a slash status proc. It's a nice little addition, but don't expect it to do too much damage. Now, the real cherry on top of this ability is the fact that while Warding Halo is active, you're immune to all status effects, including knockdowns. And yes, that includes self-knockdowns. Even explosions can't stop Nezha from getting to where he wants to be. Warding Halo's damage absorption base amount and multiplier, as well as the slash and explosion damage, are affected by ability strength mods. The range of the slash status proc and explosion are affected by ability range mods, and ability duration has no effect on this ability. Warding Halo does have an augment called Safeguard, which lets you cast it on allies at half strength. I personally don't use this, but it is super good. Make sure to give this one a try. Okay, last but not least, Nezha's fourth ability, Divine Spears. It's kind of a simple ability, but don't let that fool you of its potential. When you cast it, it impales all enemies around you on spears for a short amount of time, dealing some damage. You can then recast it while the enemies are on the spear to slam them into the ground, which will then deal some more damage to them. If you don't recast it, the spears will just disappear and the enemies will go back to doing their usual thing after getting up off the ground. Now, remember when I said that Blazing Chakram has another synergy? Well, here we are, and this is where it and Divine Spears really shine. When the enemies are impaled by Divine Spears, and then you cast Blazing Chakram on them, you'll create a new ring that will seek out a new enemy that has been speared. Oh, and remember that whole damage buff thing on Blazing Chakram? Yeah, it'll affect this too. One ring hits, and any other rings will get the damage bonus on that enemy. Divine Spear's damage is affected by ability strength mods, the range is affected by ability range mods, and the duration of your enemies being impaled is affected by ability duration mods. Now that we've covered the abilities, let's get into build concepts and my personal build as well. Let's first start off with your basic build and mods. Since Nezha is a frontline tanky frame, I would always suggest to get a Vitality or Umbral Vitality for health, Steel Fiber or Umbral Fiber for armor to buff up Warding Halo and to generally make you more survivable, and an aura of your choice. My personal suggestion is Corrosive Projection, but it really depends on your playstyle and what kind of game you want to play. So as we talked about while describing the abilities, Nezha really benefits from ability strength, so that's going to be our focus. Mods like Intensify or Umbral Intensify, Transient Fortitude, and Augur Secrets are great for this. I personally wouldn't suggest Blind Rage, as the hit to efficiency really negatively impacts the frame's potential in my mind. Remember, we are casting a lot of abilities with Nezha. Secondly, range and duration mods are both great options, but significantly less important than strength, so just one mod for each should be good. I personally would suggest Continuity or Prime Continuity for duration, and Stretch for ranged. Lastly, we have a few flex spots here. These are great for further survivability mods like Adaptation, augment mods like Warding Halo, or maybe you want more energy, so throw on a Flow or Primed Flow. Be creative, try things out and see what works for you. And finally, here's my personal build. I like to play Nezha in the front line as the tanky DPS badass that he is. I focus on a more general playstyle so that I don't have to worry about min-maxing, and I can take on all levels and difficulties of content. With that in mind, I focused heavily on ability strength with Transient Fortitude, Power Drift, and a max ranked Umbral Intensify. I've also used the other two Umbral mods as well for further ability strength, armor, and health. And I've included a non-max level adaptation for even more damage reduction. Of course, to get the most of the abilities, I've included a Prime Continuity for some ability duration, and to negate the negative duration from Transient Fortitude, and a Stretch for some range. If you're not finding the range to be super useful, I would suggest using a Streamline instead for some ability efficiency. To round it all off, I've included a Reaping Chakram for the massive damage it brings, and the health orbs that drop from it if I notice my allies having some survivability issues. This is a super resource intensive build with 2 Umbral formas, not to mention the mods, so newer players don't worry about this kind of build right off the bat. This is very much an endgame style of build. Work your way up to it. With this build, you'll have more than enough ability strength to maximize Nezha's potential, without any major drawbacks to regular gameplay that some min-max builds may have. So what do you think of Nezha? Have I convinced you to give him a try next time you log in? What kind of build do you like to go for in Warframe? Let me know in the comments down below. If you liked the video and would like to support the channel, I'd love it if you toss a subscription our way, or maybe even give the video a like. Want to watch me live? I stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/Xenosfire, so don't be a stranger and come on by. And until next time, be safe and be good to each other, and I'll see you in the next video.